The upscale restaurant buzzed with holiday cheer, crystal chandeliers casting warm light over tables draped in white linen. Hyuk Jin Kang sat perfectly still in the corner booth, his dark eyes fixed on the woman across from him, who checked her phone for the third time in 5 minutes. Daein Lee was beautiful, exactly his sister's type to set him up with, polished, appropriate, boring. "I'm sorry," Daein said, not sounding sorry at all. "You're just not what I expected." Her gaze flickered to the discreet bulge of the security detail at the bar, to the way the manager had nervously seated them himself. "I don't think this is going to work." Hyuk Jin's jaw tightened imperceptibly. The delicate Korean script, tattooed vertically on his neck, barely visible above his collar, seemed to pulse with his controlled irritation. 20 years building an empire, and he couldn't even get through one dinner without his reputation preceding him. "I understand," he said coolly, rising from his seat with fluid grace. The white dress shirt he wore had 4 buttons undone, revealing a glimpse of his muscled chest. "Merry Christmas, Ms. Lee." As he strode toward the exit, his phone buzzed. Jin Hee's text read, "How's it going, Oppa?" He didn't reply. Outside, snow fell softly on Chicago's streets, Christmas lights twinkling in the December darkness. Hyuk Jin breathed in the cold air, trying to remember why he'd let his sister talk him into this disaster in the first place. Then he heard it. A child's voice, bright with wonder. "Mommy, look at all the lights." Vanessa Carter pulled her coat tighter around her 7-year-old son as they stepped out of the bus onto Michigan Avenue. Jason's eyes were wide with excitement, despite the worn state of his winter jacket, 2 sizes too small, held together by her careful stitching and prayers it would last one more season. "Can we see the Christmas tree, Mommy? Please." Jason tugged at her hand, his breath forming little clouds in the December air. Vanessa's heart squeezed. They'd taken 3 buses to get downtown, using the last of her weekly transportation budget. The coffee shop she owned, a tiny storefront in the South Side, barely broke even most months, but it was Christmas Eve, and Jason had been so good this year, he deserved to see the magic of the city dressed up in holiday splendor, even if they couldn't afford to do more than look. "Just for a little while, baby," she said, smiling down at him. Her natural 4C curls were pulled back in a practical bun, her caramel-brown skin glowing despite her exhaustion. At 28, Vanessa carried herself with quiet dignity that came from surviving single motherhood, a failed relationship, and the constant struggle to keep her business afloat. They walked along the magnificent mile, Jason pressing his face against store windows, pointing at displays. Vanessa calculated silently. Bus fare home, the electric bill due next week, Jason's school supplies for January. The numbers never quite added up, but somehow she always made it work. "Mommy, that man looks sad," Jason whispered, pointing. Vanessa followed his gaze to a tall Korean man standing outside an upscale restaurant, his profile sharp against the falling snow. Even from a distance, she could see the tension in his shoulders, the way he stood apart from the holiday crowd like an island of stillness in a sea of chaos. Hyuk Jin Kang was indeed contemplating his evening's failure when he noticed them, a woman and a small boy, clearly out of place among the designer-clad shoppers. The woman's coat was clean but old, carefully maintained. The boy's shoes had been resolubed multiple times, yet there was something about the way she held herself, the protective way her hand rested on her son's shoulder, that made him pause. Their eyes met across the snowy sidewalk. Vanessa felt the impact of his gaze like a physical thing. Dark eyes, intense and searching, set in a face of sharp, masculine beauty. His black hair was perfectly styled. His tailored suit probably cost more than 3 months of her rent. The 4 open buttons of his white dress shirt seemed almost casual, but everything else about him screamed power and danger. She should have looked away, should have taken Jason's hand and walked in the opposite direction. Instead, she found herself nodding, a simple acknowledgement of shared humanity on a cold Christmas Eve. Hyuk Jin's security detail materialized from the shadows. Taejun Nam, his right-hand man, appeared at his elbow. "Sir, the car is ready?" But Hyuk Jin wasn't listening. He was watching the woman crouch down to her son's level, adjusting his too small jacket with such tender care that something in his chest, something he'd thought long dead, stirred painfully. Jason suddenly broke free from his mother's grasp and ran toward Hyuk Jin, his child's instinct sensing something the adults around him missed. "Mister, are you okay? You looked sad." "Jason!" Vanessa rushed forward, mortified. "I'm so sorry, sir. He didn't mean to—" She stopped short when she got close enough to really see him. close enough to see the delicate vertical Korean script tattooed on the side of his neck, the slight shadow of stubble on his jaw, the way his eyes, initially cold and distant, softened almost imperceptibly as he looked down at her son. "I'm fine," Hyuk-jin said, his voice deep and measured with a slight accent that made Vanessa's pulse quicken inexplicably. He crouched down to Jason's level with surprising grace for a man his size. "What's your name?" "Jason Carter. I'm 7. We came to see the Christmas lights because Mommy works really hard and never gets to take breaks, so I asked Santa to let her have one good day, and he did." Jason beamed, completely unaware of the tension radiating from the suited men who'd formed a protective semicircle around their boss. Hyuk-jin's gaze lifted to Vanessa's face. She met it steadily despite her embarrassment, despite the obvious wealth gap between them, despite every instinct telling her this man was dangerous in ways that had nothing to do with the obvious security detail. "Your son has good instincts," Hyuk-jin said, rising to his full height. He towered over her 5'6" frame, but somehow she didn't feel threatened. "I was having a disappointing evening." "I'm sorry to hear that," Vanessa replied, her voice warmer than she intended. There was something in his eyes, a loneliness that resonated with her own. Jason has a gift for spotting people who need a little Christmas cheer. A ghost of a smile touched Hyuk-jin's lips. "Does he?" "Mister, are you going to see the big Christmas tree too?" Jason asked hopefully. "Mommy says we can only stay for a little bit, but maybe if you're going we could all go together. It's more fun with more people." "Jason, I'm sure this gentleman has plans," Vanessa began, gently pulling her son back. "Actually," Hyuk-jin heard himself say, surprising everyone including himself, "I don't. My evening just freed up unexpectedly." He looked at Vanessa, something unreadable in his expression. "Can we go with you?" The question hung in the cold air between them. Taejun shifted uncomfortably, clearly wanting to intervene. The security detail exchanged confused glances. This was not protocol. This was not how Hyuk-jin Kang, head of the most powerful Korean organization in Chicago, conducted himself. Vanessa should have said no. Every rational part of her brain screamed that this was inappropriate, that men who looked like him and carried themselves with that kind of lethal grace were not the kind of people single mothers from the South Side should get involved with. But Jason's face lit up like the Christmas lights around them, and something in Hyuk-jin's eyes, something vulnerable and almost pleading, made her hesitate. "I suppose, if you really don't have other plans," she said slowly, aware of how surreal this moment was. "The tree lighting is in half an hour." Hyuk-jin's smile was slight but genuine. "Then we shouldn't waste time." He turned to Taejun. "Follow at a distance. Don't interfere unless absolutely necessary." Taejun's expression suggested he thought this entire situation was absolutely necessary to interfere with, but he nodded tersely. "Yes, sir." As they began walking toward Millennium Park, Jason between them chattering excitedly about Christmas, Hyuk-jin felt the strangest sensation, like he'd just stepped off a cliff and was free falling through space. He'd built his entire adult life on control, on calculated moves and strategic thinking. Nothing about this was calculated. Vanessa was acutely aware of the man walking beside her, of the way people unconsciously moved out of their path, of the expensive scent of his cologne mixing with the winter air. She snuck a glance at him and found him looking down at Jason with an expression of such concentrated attention that her breath caught. "So, Mr. she ventured. "Hyuk-jin," he said. "Hyuk-jin Kang. Vanessa Carter. But I guess Jason already introduced us." She laughed nervously. "I run a small coffee shop on the south side. What do you do?" There was the briefest pause. "Import and export," he said smoothly, "and some security consulting." It wasn't technically a lie. The Kang organization did handle imports, though not the legal kind. And they certainly provided security, though usually of the enforcer variety. But something about the way Vanessa looked at him, without fear or judgment, made him want to preserve this moment of normalcy just a little longer. "That sounds impressive," Vanessa said, though she sensed there was more to the story. The way his security team moved around them, the deference shown by passers-by. This was not an ordinary businessman. They reached Millennium Park as the tree lighting ceremony began. The massive Christmas tree stood illuminated against the night sky, thousands of lights twinkling like captured stars. The crowd pressed close, and instinctively Hyuk-jin moved to shield Vanessa and Jason from the crush of bodies. His hand came to rest on the small of Vanessa's back, a protective gesture that sent electricity racing up her spine. She looked up at him, startled by the intensity of her reaction to his touch. "Sorry," he murmured, though he didn't move his hand. "Crowd control. Thank you," she managed, her voice slightly breathless. Jason, perched on Hyuk-jin's shoulders now, when had that happened, squealed with delight as the tree blazed to life. "Mommy, look! It's so beautiful!" Vanessa's eyes stung with unexpected tears. Her baby was so happy, and for one moment they felt like a normal family enjoying Christmas together, even though this stranger was decidedly not normal, and this situation was anything but ordinary. Hyuk-jin felt Jason's small hands gripping his hair for balance, and experienced a fierce protective surge that shocked him with its intensity. When was the last time he'd felt anything this genuine? When had his carefully constructed world of violence and strategy felt so hollow as it did right now, holding this child who trusted him implicitly, standing next to this woman who looked at him like he was just a man, not a monster? As the ceremony ended and the crowd began to disperse, reality crept back in. Vanessa checked her phone and winced. "We need to catch the last bus," she said reluctantly. "Jason, say thank you to Mr. Kang for letting you sit on his shoulders." "Thank you," Jason said as Hyuk-jin carefully lowered him to the ground. "This was the best Christmas Eve ever." Hyuk-jin crouched down again. "It was my pleasure, Jason." He reached into his wallet and pulled out a business card, handing it to Vanessa. "If you ever need anything." Vanessa took the card, their fingers brushing. The contact sent another jolt through her system. "Thank you for tonight. It meant a lot." "Vanessa," Hyuk-jin said, his voice dropping lower, more intimate. "Can we go with you to the bus stop? I mean, it's late." There it was again, that strange echo of Jason's earlier question, but with entirely different implications. Vanessa's heart hammered. This man, whoever he really was, wanted to extend their time together. And God help her, she wanted that too. "Okay," she whispered. They walked through the snowy streets, Jason between them, talking non-stop. Hyuk-jin found himself answering the boys' endless questions with surprising patience. Behind them, Tae-jun and the security detail followed like shadows, their presence a constant reminder of the reality Hyuk-jin couldn't escape. At the bus stop, Vanessa turned to face him fully. "Thank you, Hyuk-jin, really. This was unexpected." "The best things usually are," he replied, holding her gaze. Then, making a decision that would change everything. "Don't take the bus. Let me drive you home." "Please!" Vanessa opened her mouth to refuse. This was too much, too fast, too dangerous in ways she couldn't articulate. But then she saw the way he looked at Jason, the gentleness in his expression, and the words that came out were, "Are you sure?" "I've never been more sure of anything," Hyuk-jin said, and meant it with a certainty that terrified him. As they walked toward his waiting car, a sleek black vehicle that probably cost more than Vanessa would make in 5 years, she felt the trajectory of her life shifting beneath her feet. She didn't know who Hyuk-jin Kang really was, didn't know what kind of world he lived in. But as he helped Jason into the car with careful hands, as his fingers lingered just a moment too long on hers, as their eyes met in the rearview mirror once they were all inside, Vanessa knew with absolute certainty that after tonight, nothing would ever be the same. Tae-jun slid into the driver's seat, his expression carefully neutral. "Where to, sir?" Hyuk-jin looked at Vanessa expectantly. She gave her address, a modest neighborhood far from this glittering downtown world, and wondered if she'd just made the best or worst decision of her life. As the car pulled away from the curb, Jason already drowsing against her shoulder, Vanessa caught Hyuk-jin watching them in the mirror. The intensity in his eyes made her breath catch. This wasn't just politeness. This wasn't just a good deed on Christmas Eve. This was something else entirely. Something that felt like destiny, wrapped in danger, tied with a bow of impossible attraction. And as the city lights blurred past the windows, Vanessa Carter realized she was falling into something she couldn't control, and for the first time in years, she wasn't sure she wanted to stop herself. The next morning, Vanessa stood in her coffee shop, Carter's Corner, trying to focus on the espresso machine that needed cleaning. But her mind kept drifting back to last night, to dark eyes watching her in the rearview mirror, to the gentle way strong hands had helped Jason out of the car, to the business card burning a hole in her pocket. The bell above the door chimed. Vanessa looked up, expecting her morning regular. Instead, Hyuk-jin Kang walked in. He looked different in daylight, no less imposing, but somehow more human in dark jeans and a leather jacket over that white dress shirt. still with the top buttons undone in a way that should have been illegal. The Korean script on his neck was more visible now, delicate and mysterious. "Vanessa," he said, and the way her name sounded in his slightly accented voice made her stomach flip. "Hyuk-jin, this is unexpected." She wiped her hands on her apron nervously. "How did you find—" She stopped. Of course he'd found her. Men with security details could find anyone. "I remembered the name of your shop. Jason mentioned it 17 times last night." A slight smile tugged at his lips. "He's very proud of you." Vanessa's heart melted a little. "Would you like some coffee?" "Please." He settled onto a stool at the counter, looking completely out of place among the mismatched furniture and cheerful local artwork. Yet somehow he also looked perfectly content. As Vanessa prepared his Americano, she'd guessed his preference correctly, judging by his approving nod. She became aware of how closely he watched her movements. It wasn't predatory, exactly, more like fascinated. "Why are you really here?" she asked quietly, sliding the cup across to him. Hyuk-jin took a sip, considering his answer. "Honestly, I don't entirely know. I woke up this morning and couldn't stop thinking about you, about Jason, about how the world felt, different with you in it." The raw honesty in his voice stole her breath. "Hyuk-jin, I know this is unusual," he continued. "I know you don't know me, but I'd like to change that, if you'll let me." Before Vanessa could respond, the bell chimed again. Her best friend Autumn burst in, then stopped dead at the sight of Hyuk-jin. "Girl, who is this fine man in your shop?" she stage whispered, not quietly at all. Vanessa felt her face heat. "Autumn, this is Hyuk-jin." "Hyuk-jin, my best friend and biggest gossip, Autumn." Autumn's eyes went wide with recognition, not of Hyuk-jin specifically, but of the type of man he clearly was. She'd grown up in Chicago. She knew power when she saw it. "Well, well, aren't you just full of surprises?" She gave Vanessa a meaningful look. "I'll just be in the back, doing inventory, very loud inventory, that you can interrupt any time." As Autumn disappeared, Vanessa shook her head. "I apologize for her." "Don't. It's refreshing." Hyuk-jin's expression softened. "Most people are too afraid to speak freely around me." "Should I be afraid?" Vanessa asked, meeting his eyes directly. The question hung between them. Hyuk-jin set down his cup carefully. "Of me? No, never. But my world, that's complicated." "How complicated?" Before he could answer, Jason's voice rang out from the back room where Vanessa kept a small play area. "Mommy, I finished my drawing." He raced around the corner, then skidded to a stop. "Mr. Kang, you came back." The pure joy on Jason's face did something to Hyuk-jin's carefully guarded heart. He crouched down as the boy launched himself forward. "I did. I wanted to see your mom's famous coffee shop." "It's the best shop ever," Jason declared loyally. "Mommy makes it special. She says anywhere can be special if you put love into it." Hyuk-jin's eyes met Vanessa's over Jason's head. "Your mother is a very wise woman." The moment was interrupted by Vanessa's phone buzzing. She glanced at it and paled. "Excuse me," she muttered, stepping away to take the call. Hyuk-jin couldn't hear the conversation, but he saw her shoulders tighten, saw the stress bloom across her features. When she returned, she was clearly shaken. "Everything okay?" he asked quietly. "Fine," she lied, trying to smile. "Just landlord stuff. Nothing I can't handle." But Hyuk-jin had built an empire on reading people, and Vanessa Carter was a terrible liar. Something was very wrong. "Vanessa, I really do need to handle some things," she said, her voice strained. "Thank you for stopping by. It was nice to see you again." She was dismissing him, politely but firmly. Hyuk-jin recognized the walls going up, the way she was retreating into herself. He wanted to push, wanted to demand she let him help with whatever was clearly threatening her peace of mind. Instead, he stood. "If you need anything." "I won't," Vanessa said, but her voice cracked slightly on the words. "I can't. Whatever you are, whoever you are, I have Jason to think about. I can't bring that kind of complication into his life." Hyuk-jin felt something crack in his chest. She was right, of course. He was the worst thing that could happen to a woman like her. But God, he didn't want to walk away. "I understand," he said quietly. Then, lowering his voice so only she could hear, "But you're wrong about one thing. You can need me. You can call me. Because whether you like it or not, Vanessa Carter, I'm not going anywhere." He left before she could respond, but not before Jason ran up to hug him goodbye. Hyuk-jin hugged the boy back, fierce and protective, then forced himself to walk out the door. Outside, Taijun was waiting. "Sir, we have a situation. Detective Kyle Morrison is making noise about the shipment from last week." Hyuk-jin's jaw tightened. Morrison, corrupt to his core, but still dangerous. "Handle it." "There's more." Taejun hesitated. "He's been asking questions. About you, about the blind date last night, about what?" Hyuk-jin's voice dropped to a dangerous quiet. "About a woman and child you were seen with." Ice flooded Hyuk-jin's veins. If Morrison had connected Vanessa to him, she was in danger. The kind of danger that men like Morrison represented, men who would use any weakness against him. And Vanessa Carter, with her warm eyes and fierce love for her son, with her pride and dignity and strength, she was absolutely a weakness. "Start protective surveillance," Hyuk-jin ordered. "I want someone on her and the boy at all times, discreet. She doesn't need to know." "Sir, is that wise? Getting involved with a civilian, did I ask for your opinion?" Hyuk-jin's tone could have frozen hell. Taejun bowed slightly. "No, sir, I'll arrange it immediately." As Hyuk-jin slid into his car, his phone buzzed. A message from his sister, Jin-hee. "Dain said the date was a disaster. Want to tell me what happened?" He stared at the message, then looked back at the coffee shop. Through the window he could see Vanessa holding Jason, her face pressed against her son's hair. Even from here he could see she was crying. Everything in him roared to go back inside, to fix whatever was wrong, to use his power and resources to solve her problems. But she told him no. She told him she couldn't have his kind of complication in her life. Hyuk-jin Kang had conquered territories, eliminated rivals, built an empire through sheer will and calculated violence. But he couldn't force his way into the life of a single mother who just wanted to keep her son safe and her small corner of the world intact. He texted Jin-hee back. "It was exactly what I needed." Then he made a call. "Find out everything about Vanessa Carter's financial situation, her landlord, her debts, everything, and do it quietly. If she wouldn't let him help directly, he'd find another way." Because the truth was settling into his bones with terrifying certainty. Vanessa Carter and her son had become his, whether she accepted it or not. And Hyuk-jin Kang protected what was his. 3 days passed. Vanessa threw herself into work, trying not to think about dark eyes and gentle hands, trying not to look at the business card she'd hidden in her drawer. Her landlord had given her until the end of January to come up with 3 months' back rent or he'd evict her, both from the shop and the apartment above it. She'd cried herself to sleep that first night, then woke up and got to work. She'd survived worse. She'd figure this out. But on the 4th morning when she arrived at the shop, there was an envelope taped to the door. Inside was a cashier's check for the exact amount she owed, and a note in sharp, elegant handwriting. "Consider it an investment in the best coffee in Chicago. No strings, no expectations. Just a friend helping a friend." Vanessa's hands shook as she clutched the check. She should tear it up, should march to whatever upscale office he worked from and throw it in his face. She didn't need charity, didn't need some rich man thinking he could buy his way into her life. But then Jason came bounding up the stairs from their apartment, already dressed for school, chattering about whether they could have pancakes for breakfast. And Vanessa looked at the check again, at the lifeline it represented, at the 3 months of breathing room, of stability for her son. She tucked it into her pocket, hating herself a little, grateful beyond words, and absolutely terrified of what accepting this meant. That afternoon, her phone buzzed with an unknown number. "You don't have to thank me. You don't have to do anything. But if you're free tomorrow night, I'd like to take you and Jason to dinner. Properly this time." Hyuk-jin Vanessa stared at the message for a long time. Then, before she could second-guess herself, she typed, "Okay." His response was immediate. "I'll pick you up at 6. Autumn, reading over her shoulder, whistled low. "Girl, you're playing with fire." "I know," Vanessa whispered. "But maybe it's time I felt some warmth." The restaurant Hyuk-jin chose wasn't the upscale place where his disastrous blind date had occurred. Instead, it was a cozy Korean-American fusion place in a neighborhood that straddled the line between his world and Vanessa's, neutral ground in more ways than one. Jason was vibrating with excitement in his nicest outfit, clothes Vanessa had carefully washed and pressed. She'd agonized over her own appearance, finally settling on a simple black dress that Autumn had forced her to buy months ago, insisting every woman needed one killer dress. Vanessa had protested it was too nice, too expensive for her budget. Now, seeing the way Hyuk-jin's eyes darkened when he picked them up, she was grateful for Autumn's insistence. "You look beautiful," Hyuk-jin said quietly, and the sincerity in his voice made her blush. You clean up pretty well yourself, she managed, taking in his perfectly tailored dark suit, the white dress shirt underneath with those 4 buttons undone that seemed to be his signature. The Korean script tattoo on his neck drew her eyes again, mysterious and intimate. During dinner, Jason kept them entertained with a constant stream of 7-year-old observations about everything from the banchan side dishes to the fish tank in the corner. But beneath the surface normalcy, Vanessa was hyper-aware of Hyuk-jin beside her, the way he made sure she was served first, how he patiently explained different dishes to Jason, the protective way his hand would rest briefly on her lower back when they moved through the restaurant. "Thank you," Vanessa said quietly when Jason was distracted by the chef preparing their tableside bulgogi. "For the check. I shouldn't have accepted it, but you needed it," Hyuk-jin finished. "And I wanted to help, it's that simple. Nothing about you is simple," she countered, meeting his eyes. "Is it?" A shadow crossed his face. "No, it's not. Will you tell me the truth about what you do?" Hyuk-jin was silent for a long moment, his jaw working. Finally, "Not here, not now, but yes, Vanessa, I'll tell you. You deserve to know what you're getting into." "What am I getting into?" Her voice was barely a whisper. His hand found hers under the table, his thumb tracing circles on her palm. "Something that terrifies me, something I have no business wanting, something I can't seem to walk away from." Vanessa's breath caught. "Hyuk-jin." "Mommy, look," Jason interrupted, pointing at the dramatic flames rising from the grill. The moment broke, but the intensity lingered. After dinner, instead of taking them straight home, Hyuk-jin surprised them by driving to a small, well-lit park. "I thought Jason might enjoy the Christmas lights one more time before they come down." Jason was thrilled, racing ahead to look at the displays while Taijun and the security detail maintained their discreet perimeter. Vanessa and Hyuk-jin walked slowly behind him, close enough that their shoulders brushed with each step. "Tell me about Jason's father," Hyuk-jin said quietly. Vanessa stiffened. "That's a hell of a conversation starter. I want to know you, Vanessa. All of you, including the parts that hurt." She took a shaky breath. "His name was Marcus. We were together for 3 years. I thought we were building a life together. Then I got pregnant, and suddenly he had 100 reasons why the timing was wrong. He left when I was 6 months along. I haven't heard from him since Jason was born." Hyuk-jin's hand clenched into a fist. The idea of any man walking away from Vanessa, from a child, from Jason specifically, made violence sing through his veins. He's a fool. He was honest, at least. He didn't want to be a father. Better to know that early than to have Jason grow up wondering why Daddy didn't love him enough to stay. Her voice cracked slightly. "That's what I tell myself anyway." "Jason is extraordinary because you made him that way," Hyuk-jin said fiercely. "Whatever that man missed out on is his loss and my gain." Vanessa stopped walking, turning to face him fully. "Your gain?" "Yes." Hyuk-jin stepped closer, his hand coming up to cup her face with surprising gentleness for such a powerful man. "I'm not good with words, Vanessa. I'm good with action, with strategy, with control. But you and Jason, you make me want to be different. Better. I don't want you to be different," Vanessa heard herself say. "I want to know who you really are, even if it scares you. I'm already scared. Tell me anyway." Hyuk-jin's thumb traced her cheekbone, his eyes searching hers in the soft glow of Christmas lights. "I run an organization. Import, export. That wasn't a complete lie. But the imports aren't legal. The exports even less so. I control territory in this city. I have blood on my hands, Vanessa, more than you can imagine." She should have pulled away, should have grabbed Jason and run. Instead, she leaned into his touch. "Are you dangerous?" "Yes." "To me? To Jason?" "Never." The word was a vow. "I would burn down this entire city before I let anything happen to either of you." "That's not exactly reassuring," Vanessa said, but her voice was soft, not afraid. "I know. I'm sorry. I should walk away, let you live your life without this complication. But I can't, Vanessa. I've tried. I can't." "Then don't," she whispered. The space between them evaporated. Hyuk-jin's lips found hers in a kiss that was both tender and desperate, claiming and questioning. Vanessa's hands fisted in his jacket, pulling him closer, drowning in the taste of him, the feel of his strong arms wrapping around her. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Hyuk-jin pressed his forehead to hers. "You're going to be the death of me, Vanessa Carter." "Good," she said shakily, "because you're already destroying me." "Mommy, Mr. Kang, come look at this one," Jason's voice called out, saving them from the intensity of the moment. They walked over to where Jason was examining an elaborate light display of reindeer. As Hyuk-jin explained something about the mechanics of the animation, Vanessa watched them together and felt her heart crack wide open. Jason was already attaching, already seeing Hyuk-jin as something more than a kind stranger. And so was she. Later, when Hyuk-jin dropped them off at their apartment, he walked them to the door. Jason was half asleep in Vanessa's arms. "Can I see you again?" Hyuk-jin asked, and the vulnerability in his voice undid her completely. "Yes," Vanessa said, "but Hyuk-jin, if this continues, if we do this, I need you to promise me something. Anything. Jason comes first. Always. If your world ever threatens him, you walk away. No questions, no arguments. You just go." Hyuk-jin's jaw tightened, but he nodded. "I promise. His safety is non-negotiable." "Good." She shifted Jason's weight, preparing to go inside. "Vanessa," Hyuk-jin called softly. When she turned back, he continued, "I've never had something like this. Something real. Something worth protecting. I don't know how to do this without messing it up." "Then we'll figure it out together," she said. As she closed the door behind her, Vanessa leaned against it, her heart pounding. She'd just agreed to date a Korean Mafia boss, a man who admittedly had blood on his hands, a man who represented everything dangerous and forbidden. But when she closed her eyes, all she could see was the way he'd looked at Jason with such fierce protectiveness, the way he'd kissed her like she was precious, the vulnerability hiding beneath all that power. Maybe she was making the biggest mistake of her life, or maybe, just maybe, she was finally letting herself have something good. Over the next 2 weeks, Hyuk-jin became part of their daily lives, in ways both subtle and profound. He'd show up at the coffee shop during slow periods, sitting at the counter and doing work on his laptop, while Vanessa went about her business. He'd time his visits for when Jason got home from school, always bringing something small. A book, a toy, a treat from the Korean bakery. He never pushed for more than Vanessa was ready to give, never demanded her time or attention. But he was there, steady and constant, showing up in the way Marcus never had. Jason flourished under the attention. The quiet, sometimes withdrawn boy became more confident, more outgoing. He started drawing pictures of the three of them together, hanging them proudly in the coffee shop. Vanessa tried not to read too much into it, tried not to let herself fall completely. But every time Hyuk-jin looked at her like she'd hung the moon, every time he listened to Jason's rambling stories with genuine interest, every time his hand found hers under the table, she fell a little harder. The day everything shifted began ordinarily enough. Vanessa was closing up the shop when Detective Kyle Morrison walked in. She knew immediately something was wrong. The man radiated hostility, his cold eyes sweeping over her shop with barely concealed contempt. "Vanessa Carter?" he asked, though clearly he already knew. "Yes. Can I help you?" "Detective Kyle Morrison. I have some questions about your relationship with Hyuk-jin Kang." Vanessa's blood ran cold. "I don't know what you're talking about. Don't play dumb. You've been seen with him multiple times. You accepted money from him." Morrison stepped closer, and Vanessa instinctively backed up. "See, here's the thing, Ms. Carter. Kang is dangerous. He's a criminal, and anyone associating with him becomes a person of interest in our investigations." "I haven't done anything wrong," Vanessa said, fighting to keep her voice steady. "Maybe not yet. But you have a son, don't you? Jason." Morrison's smile was cruel. Shame if Child Services got a tip about a mother involving her kid with known criminals. Might not look good in a custody evaluation. Rage and fear warred in Vanessa's chest. "Are you threatening me?" "I'm warning you. Stay away from Kang or there will be consequences." Morrison dropped a card on the counter. "When you're ready to cooperate with our investigation, give me a call." He left and Vanessa immediately locked the door behind him, her hands shaking violently. Then she grabbed her phone and did something she swore she wouldn't do. She called Hyuk-jin. He answered on the first ring. "Vanessa, a detective just came to my shop. Morrison, he threatened me, threatened Jason." Her voice broke. "Hyuk-jin, I can't, if Child Services, I'm on my way. Lock the doors, don't move." The deadly calm in his voice was somehow more frightening than Morrison's overt threats. He arrived within 10 minutes, Tae-jun right behind him. The moment Hyuk-jin saw Vanessa's face, something violent flickered across his expression before he controlled it. He crossed to her in 3 strides, pulling her into his arms. "Tell me everything," he said quietly. She did, her words tumbling out between gasps. When she finished, Hyuk-jin's jaw was so tight she thought it might crack. "He will never threaten you again," Hyukjin said, each word deliberate and cold. I promise you that. What are you going to do? Vanessa asked, pulling back to look at him. Whatever I have to. He cupped her face in his hands. I told you I would protect you and Jason. I meant it. Don't do something that will make this worse. Please. Vanessa. His voice softened. Morrison is corrupt. He's been trying to get leverage on me for months. This is about him, not you. But I won't let him use you as a weapon against me. Maybe he's right, though, Vanessa said, her voice breaking. Maybe I should stay away from you for Jason's sake. Hyukjin went very still. Is that what you want? No, she whispered. God help me, no. But I'm terrified, Hyukjin. If anything happened to Jason because of me, because of us, it won't. He kissed her forehead, her cheeks, finally her lips with aching tenderness. I swear to you it won't. Let me handle Morrison. Trust me. And despite everything, despite the fear, the uncertainty, the very real danger, Vanessa found herself nodding. Okay, I trust you. The words seemed to break something in Hyukjin. He pulled her close again, burying his face in her hair, and for a moment, he was just a man holding the woman he was falling for, terrified of losing her, desperate to keep her safe. I love you, he said against her ear, the words raw and unplanned. I know it's too soon, I know it's insane, but I love you, Vanessa. You and Jason. You're mine to protect now. Vanessa's eyes filled with tears. Hyukjin, you don't have to say it back. I just needed you to know. Whatever happens, whatever you decide, I love you. But Vanessa was already kissing him, pouring everything she felt into it. The fear, the hope, the terrifying freefall of falling in love with a man who could destroy her world or become her whole world. When they finally broke apart, Taejun cleared his throat awkwardly from the doorway. Sir, we should move. Hyukjin nodded, but his eyes never left Vanessa's face. I'll call you later. Keep your doors locked. And Vanessa? Yes? This doesn't end with me walking away, it ends with us together. However, we have to make that happen. After he left, Vanessa sank into a chair, her whole body shaking. She'd just told a Korean Mafia boss she trusted him. He'd just told her he loved her. And somewhere out there, a corrupt detective was planning his next move. Vanessa looked at Jason's drawings on the wall, stick figures of her, Jason, and Hyukjin holding hands under a smiling sun. So innocent, so hopeful. She grabbed her phone and texted Autumn, I'm in love with him. God help me, I'm in love with him. Autumn's response was immediate. Then you fight for it, girl. Fight for your happiness. Vanessa stared at the message, then at the card Morrison had left behind. Then at her phone, where Hyukjin's number was now at the top of her recent calls. She'd spent 7 years playing it safe, protecting Jason, building her small life brick by careful brick. And in 2 weeks, Hyukjin Kang had demolished those walls and shown her what it felt like to want something more. She wasn't going to let Morrison or anyone else take that away. Not without a fight. The next 48 hours were tense. Hyukjin had people watching Vanessa and Jason around the clock, though he'd promised to keep it discreet. Vanessa felt the eyes on her, but strangely, instead of feeling invaded, she felt protected. Then everything went to hell. It started with a fire. Vanessa was in the shop when she smelled smoke. She ran upstairs to their apartment to find flames licking up from the storage room. She barely had time to grab Jason from his bedroom before the smoke alarm started screaming. They made it outside, coughing and terrified as firefighters arrived. The building was saved, but the damage to the storage room and part of their apartment was extensive. The fire marshal deemed it suspicious almost immediately. Vanessa stood on the sidewalk holding Jason close as he cried into her shoulder and knew with absolute certainty. This was Morrison. This was his warning. Her phone rang. Hyukjin. I just heard. Are you hurt? Is Jason okay? We're fine. Scared, but fine. Hyukjin, this was... I know, I'm handling it. His voice was lethal. Where are you now? Outside the shop. They won't let us back in yet. I don't know where we're going to stay. You're staying with me, Hyukjin said, brooking no argument. Pack whatever you can salvage. I'm sending Taejun to get you now. Hyukjin, I can't just move in with you. You can, and you will. This isn't a discussion, Vanessa. Morrison just escalated. I'm not leaving you vulnerable. Vanessa wanted to argue, wanted to maintain some shred of independence, but Jason was shaking in her arms and the smell of smoke clung to them both. Okay, she whispered. An hour later, they were pulling up to Hyukjin's penthouse in one of Chicago's most exclusive buildings. Vanessa had known he was wealthy, but seeing his home, all glass and steel and breathtaking views, drove home just how different their worlds really were. Hyuk-jin met them at the door, immediately crouching to Jason's level. "Hey buddy, you okay?" Jason threw his arms around Hyuk-jin's neck, and Vanessa watched in amazement as this powerful, dangerous man held her son with infinite gentleness. "There was a fire," Jason said, his voice small. "I was scared." "I know, but you're safe now, both of you. I promise." Hyuk-jin carried Jason inside, Vanessa following. The penthouse was stunning but surprisingly warm, clearly a home, not just a showplace. Hyuk-jin settled Jason on a plush couch with hot chocolate and blankets, then pulled Vanessa aside. "I need to tell you something," he said quietly. "Morrison didn't act alone. He's working with the Petrov organization, Russian mob that's been trying to muscle into my territory. They're using him to get to me through you." Vanessa's blood ran cold. "Russian mob? Hyuk-jin, what have I gotten Jason into?" "Nothing. This is on me, but Vanessa, you need to understand. They won't stop until they have leverage. The fire was just the beginning. Then what do we do?" Hyuk-jin's hands framed her face, his eyes intense. "You let me end this. You stay here where you're protected, and you trust that I will eliminate this threat." "How?" Vanessa asked, though part of her didn't want to know. "However, I have to." His thumb traced her lower lip. "I meant what I said, Vanessa. I love you. I'll burn down anyone who threatens that." Before she could respond, his phone rang. Tae-jun's voice was urgent enough that Vanessa could hear it. "Sir, we have a problem. Morrison is at the station filing charges, trafficking, money laundering. He's got warrants." Hyuk-jin's expression went deadly. "Stall him. I'm on my way." "Don't go," Vanessa said, grabbing his arm. "If there are warrants, I have to handle this now, before it gets worse." He kissed her hard and fast. "Stay here. Jin-hee will be here in 10 minutes to stay with you and Jason. Don't open the door for anyone else." "Hyuk-jin." But he was already gone, moving with lethal purpose. Vanessa sank onto the couch next to Jason, pulling him close. This was spiraling out of control. She'd been naive to think they could have something normal, something safe. Hyuk-jin's world was closing in around them, and she had no idea how to protect her son from it. Jin-hee arrived as promised, a striking Korean woman with kind eyes who immediately put Vanessa at ease. "My brother is stubborn," she said, settling in with them. "But he's never cared about anyone the way he cares about you and Jason. He'll fix this." "How?" Vanessa asked desperately. "By being who he is. Hyuk-jin has survived in a world that kills the weak. He's not weak, Vanessa. And neither are you, I think." The next few hours were agony. Vanessa tried to keep Jason distracted with movies and games, but her mind was on Hyuk-jin. What was he doing? Was he safe? Would he come back? Finally, near midnight, the door opened. Hyuk-jin walked in, looking exhausted, but triumphant. Tae-jun was behind him, and they were both clearly keyed up from whatever had just happened. "It's done," Hyuk-jin said simply. "What's done?" Vanessa asked, standing. "Morrison, the Petrovs, all of it." He crossed to her, pulling her into his arms. "You're safe now, both of you." "What did you do?" Vanessa pulled back to look at him, searching his face. "I made them an offer they couldn't refuse," Hyuk-jin said with dark humor. "Morrison has been convinced to retire early and very quietly. The Petrovs, let's just say they've decided Chicago isn't worth the trouble." "Did you?" Vanessa couldn't finish the question. "No one died," Hyuk-jin said, understanding. "But I won't pretend it was pretty. This is my world, Vanessa. This is what I do." Vanessa should have been horrified, should have grabbed Jason and run. Instead, she found herself kissing him, fierce and desperate and grateful, because whatever he'd done, however he'd done it, they were safe. Jason was safe. When they broke apart, Hyuk-jin rested his forehead against hers. "I need you to understand something. Loving me means accepting all of this. The danger, the violence, the reality that I'm not a good man, even if I'm trying to be better for you." "I know what you are," Vanessa said quietly. "And I love you anyway. Does that make me crazy?" "Probably." His slight smile was devastating. "But I'll take it." They stood there, wrapped in each other, while Tae-jun and Jin-hee discreetly made themselves scarce. Jason was asleep on the couch, exhausted from the day's trauma. The city glittered beyond the floor-to-ceiling windows, 1,000 lives playing out in the darkness. "Stay," Hyuk-jin whispered. "Not just tonight. Stay with me. You and Jason. Let me take care of you." "Hyuk-jin, I know it's fast, I know it's insane, but I've never been more certain of anything. You're mine, Vanessa. You've been mine since that first night when Jason asked if we could go with you. Say yes. Vanessa looked at her sleeping son, then back at the man holding her like she was precious, the man who'd just gone to war for them, the man who'd shown her what it felt like to be truly, fiercely loved. Yes, she whispered. God help us both, yes. Hyuk Jin's kiss was everything, promise, possession, devotion, and as Vanessa surrendered to it, she realized she'd stopped fighting what this was becoming. She was all in now, for better or worse. In a world of danger and darkness, she'd found her light. And she wasn't letting go. 3 weeks later, Vanessa stood in the rebuilt coffee shop, marveling at the transformation. Hyuk Jin had insisted on handling the renovations, and the result was stunning. Her original cozy vision elevated with quality materials and thoughtful design. Carter's corner was better than ever. "Mommy, look!" Jason called from the counter, where he was helping Autumn arrange pastries. "We made it pretty." "You sure did, baby," Vanessa said, smiling. Her son had blossomed in the past weeks. Living with Hyuk Jin had given him stability, safety, and something he'd never had before. A father figure who showed up, who listened, who cared. The bell chimed. Vanessa looked up to see Hyuk Jin walk in, and her heart still skipped every single time. He was in his usual uniform, white dress shirt with those 4 buttons undone, the Korean script tattoo on his neck visible, dark slacks that emphasized his lean strength. "How's the grand reopening prep?" he asked, crossing to her and pulling her into his arms like it was the most natural thing in the world. "Good. Great, actually." She went on her toes to kiss him. "Thank you, for all of this." "Stop thanking me," he murmured against her lips. "You're mine to take care of, that's how this works." Possessive much, but Vanessa was smiling. "When it comes to you and Jason, absolutely." Jason came running over, and Hyuk Jin lifted him easily, spinning him around until the boy shrieked with laughter. Watching them, Vanessa felt tears prick her eyes. This was what she'd never dared to dream about, a real family, built on love and trust and fierce protection. Later, after the shop closed and Jason was occupied with Autumn, Hyuk Jin pulled Vanessa aside. "I have something for you." He handed her a small velvet box. Vanessa's hands shook as she opened it to reveal a simple but stunning ring, a single diamond on a platinum band, elegant and timeless. "Hyuk Jin, marry me," he said, his voice rough with emotion. "I know it's fast. I know we're still figuring this out. But I've never been more certain of anything. I want you as my wife. I want to adopt Jason, make him legally mine. I want us to be a real family." Vanessa couldn't speak past the lump in her throat. "Are you sure about all of it? About taking on a ready-made family?" "Vanessa," Hyuk Jin cupped her face in his hands. "You and Jason aren't something I'm taking on. You're what I've been waiting for my whole life without knowing it. That night on Christmas Eve when Jason asked if I could go with you, that was the universe giving me everything I never knew I needed. Say yes, please." "What about your world?" Vanessa asked. "The danger? I've restructured my operations. Legitimate businesses now handle most of it. One bin is taking over the riskier side of things. I'm not walking away entirely. That's not possible. But I'm stepping back. For you. For Jason. For the life I want with you. You do that? Give up that power? In a heartbeat. Because having you is worth more than any empire." His eyes were fierce, sincere. "I love you, Vanessa Carter. You saved me that night. Let me spend the rest of my life saving you back." "You already have," Vanessa whispered. Then louder, "Yes, yes, I'll marry you." Hyuk Jin's kiss was searing, possessive, full of promise. When they finally broke apart, he slid the ring onto her finger with shaking hands. "Mommy, are you crying?" Jason's voice broke through the moment. Vanessa laughed, wiping her eyes. "Happy tears, baby." Hyuk Jin crouched down to Jason's level. "Jason, I asked your mom to marry me. That means I get to be your dad if that's okay with you." Jason's eyes went wide. Then he launched himself at Hyuk Jin with such force they both nearly toppled over. "Really? You'll really be my dad?" "Really," Hyuk Jin promised, his voice thick. "Forever." Vanessa watched her son and the man she loved clinging to each other, both of them crying now, and felt her heart expand so much it hurt. This was her family. Unconventional, a little dangerous, built on the ashes of what she'd thought her life would be. But it was real, and it was theirs. The grand reopening of Carter's Corner was a success. The community turned out in force, and Vanessa was overwhelmed by the support. Hyuk Jin stood behind the counter with her, helping serve coffee, looking completely out of place and perfectly content at the same time. Borin, The elderly Korean grandmother who owned the grocery store down the street came in and immediately started chattering to Hyuk-jin in Korean. Vanessa watched them, understanding nothing but loving the way he lit up talking to someone from his culture. "She says you're very lucky," Hyuk-jin translated with a smile, "and that I better treat you right, or she'll hit me with her wooden spoon." "I like her already," Vanessa laughed. As the day wound down, they closed up together. Vanessa, Hyuk-jin, Jason, and Autumn. It felt perfect. Right. That night, back at the penthouse, though Vanessa was still getting used to calling it home, Hyuk-jin put Jason to bed while Vanessa showered. When she came out, she found him on the balcony, looking out over the city. She joined him, and he immediately pulled her close. "Thinking about something?" she asked. "About how a rejected blind date led to this," he said. "If Diane hadn't walked out. If Jason hadn't noticed me looking sad. If you hadn't said yes when I asked if I could go with you. None of this would have happened." "Fate," Vanessa murmured. "Destiny," Hyuk-jin agreed. He turned her in his arms, his eyes intense. "I was half alive before you, Vanessa, going through motions, building an empire that meant nothing, then a beautiful woman, and her extraordinary son showed me what I'd been missing." "We weren't looking for you either," Vanessa admitted. "I'd convinced myself Jason and I were fine on our own, that we didn't need anyone. Then you showed up and proved me so wrong. We saved each other," Hyuk-jin said. "Yeah," Vanessa agreed, kissing him softly. "We did." 6 months later, they married in a small private ceremony. Jason was the ring-bearer, bursting with pride. Autumn cried through the entire thing. Jin-hee welcomed Vanessa with open arms. Won-bin gave a surprisingly heartfelt speech about never thinking he'd see his boss so domesticated. And Hyuk-jin, powerful, dangerous, lethal Hyuk-jin, looked at Vanessa like she'd hung the moon as he said his vows. "You asked if you could go with us," Vanessa said during her vows, her voice shaking with emotion. "But the truth is, we were always meant to go together. You, me, and Jason. A family built on love, trust, and the courage to choose each other every single day." When the officiant said, "You may kiss your bride," Hyuk-jin pulled Vanessa into his arms and kissed her like his life depended on it. Jason cheered. Everyone laughed. And in that moment, Vanessa knew with absolute certainty this was her happily ever after. Hard-won, unexpected, a little dangerous around the edges, but perfect, absolutely perfect. Because sometimes the best love stories start with the simplest question, "Can we go with you?" And the answer, always and forever, was yes. 2 years later, Vanessa stood in the kitchen of their new home, a beautiful house in a quiet neighborhood that somehow perfectly balanced Hyuk-jin's need for security with her desire for normalcy. The coffee shop had expanded to 3 locations now, and Hyuk-jin's legitimate businesses were thriving. Jason, now 9, was at the table doing homework, occasionally asking Hyuk-jin for help with math. Watching them together, heads bent close, Hyuk-jin's patient explanations, Jason's adoring attention, still made Vanessa's heart swell. "Mommy, when is the baby coming?" Jason asked for the 1,000th time, looking at her rounded belly. 2 more months, baby," Vanessa said, rubbing the spot where their daughter was currently doing gymnastics. Hyuk-jin appeared behind her, wrapping his arms around her and resting his hands on her stomach. "She's active today," he murmured. "She takes after her father," Vanessa teased. "Never still, always in motion." "I'm hoping she takes after her mother," Hyuk-jin countered. "Strong, beautiful, capable of bringing me to my knees with one look." "Gross," Jason commented, but he was grinning. Later, after Jason was in bed, Vanessa and Hyuk-jin sat on their back porch, watching the stars. His hand never left her belly, marveling at every movement of their daughter. "Do you ever regret it?" Vanessa asked quietly. "Giving up the life you had?" "Not for a second," Hyuk-jin said firmly. "That life was empty, Vanessa. This, you, Jason, our daughter, the family we're building, this is everything. This is what I was supposed to be doing all along." "I love you," Vanessa said, for the 1,000th time, but never enough. "I love you," Hyuk-jin echoed. Then, with that slight smile that still made her weak, "Can I go with you, wherever life takes us next?" Vanessa laughed, remembering that Christmas Eve, remembering Jason's innocent question that had changed everything. "Always," she promised, "always and forever." And as Hyuk-jin kissed her under the stars, their daughter moving between them, their son safe and happy inside, Vanessa reflected on the strange, beautiful journey that had brought them here. A rejected blind date. Her chance encounter. A simple question from a 7-year-old boy with perfect instincts. Can we go with you? The best decision of her life had been saying yes. And she'd keep saying yes to this love, this life, this family, every single day for the rest of her life.